Today, the Baldur's Gate 3 developers at Larian Studios put together an official ranking of the 20 most popular multi-class combinations over on the PlayStation blog. As someone who isn't smart enough to play on a proper multi-class and has instead spec'd 100% into Barbarian or Paladin at this point, it's really interesting to look at. So in this video, I wanted to sit down, quickly review the top 10, and talk about the 5 multi-class combos that they recommend, multiple of which didn't even make the top 20. In 10th was the Rogue Fighter combination, which kinda makes sense. Rogues like getting sneak attacks, right? And you know what's even better than getting a sneak attack? That's getting 2 to 3 sneak attacks, thanks to Action Surge and the extra attack in the Fighter class. At 9 is Wizard and Sorcerer, which I imagine is very similar to the next combo, so let's just talk about these two at once. 8th was Warlock Sorcerer. Larian writes about this combo in the blog, talking about the opportunity to combine Warlock spells with the Sorcerer's Sorcery Points feature. That's a mouthful. Whether you use that to cast 2 spells in a turn or use them to recharge your spell slots, that's up to you. But the whole point is that they are kind of synergistic in that front, even if your main attribute points aren't exactly the same. Number 7 is Warlock Paladin, which is another one that Larian highlights, specifically all about the Pact of the Blade synergy. Once Warlocks hit level 5, they get the Deepened Pact feature, which gives them an extra weapon attack per turn that combines with the Paladin's extra attack feature for a total of 3 attacks per turn. And that's on top of the Paladin benefits of getting larger critical hits and those devastating Divine Smites. And number 6 is the opposite. It's Paladin first, speccing into Warlock. Same thing. Same thing. Into the top 5, we have Fighter and Paladin. Paladin seems to be really, really popular here. In this case, they don't get their extra attack until level 5, which can be pretty frustrating as someone who literally just went through that. But if you multi-class into Fighter, you can get Action Surge with just 2 levels, letting you turn online a full level earlier. You also have the added benefit of Superiority Die, so you can do something else when you're all out of spell slots for smites, because that definitely happens to me, and then I feel useless. But if you also have Superiority Die, you can kind of make every turn count. In number 4 is the Cleric Paladin combo. Now, if you go War Cleric, you can automatically get Heavy Armor Proficiency, which is useful because I had to get that through a feat. And you can get an extra attack as a bonus action and gain access to Guided Strike, which gives you a +10 to one of your rolls, particularly useful if you're trying to Divine Smite. In number 3 is Barbarian Paladin, which is probably the tankiest build here if you go Heavy Armor Paladin. That can also rage to take half damage and really go to town on your 2-handed swings. Keep in mind that if you do that, you would be sacrificing the Barbarian benefit of not wearing armor, but you can still get super tanky. Actually, that's true of the previous one with Clerics, because Clerics can get incredibly tanky as well. Number 2 is Barbarian and Fighter. Like I said, Barbarians are already somewhat tanky even with no armor, but if you want to go offensive, add in Fighter to get some extra attacks, and things can get like super dangerous. And the top thing on the list was Rogue and Ranger. I'm not entirely surprised to see Rogue Ranger be the most popular build. They seem to be like 2 of the most popular classes in D&D in general, even though the 2 aren't super synergistic. But maybe folks just want the best of both worlds, whereas the Ranger kind of specializes in melee combat, the Rogue specializes in ranged, and those are like the 2 classes for that. But it's also nice because you can combine with Beastmaster to get an animal companion as well, though I've also heard really good things about Gloomstalker. Now, the thing I found really interesting were 3 of their recommendations that didn't make the list. In 15th was Rogue/Monk, which is a really interesting build where you play as a monk but then multi-class into Thief Rogue, which gives them an extra bonus attack. So if you combine 6 levels of Monk, 4 levels of Thief Rogue, and 2 levels of Fighter, you can potentially get up to 12 attacks per turn, and then toss in Tavern Brawler feat for good measure, and that's just wild to me. Like, that'll take a while to get to, but 12 attacks per turn? Another one they recommended was Tempest Cleric and Storm Sorcerer, which did not get ranked. So Tempest clerics get access to Destructive Wrath through your channeled divinity, which makes thunder or lightning damage rolls deal the maximum damage instead. Only on the channeled divinity activations, but still. Larian recommends combining that with a Storm Sorcerer's part of the Storm Lightning, which lets you use your reaction to create a storm that deals half of your sorcerer level rounded down whenever you cast a lightning spell. It causes all enemies within 20 feet to take that damage, so that's a pretty good sized AoE, and you can do even more damage if you spec into lightning charges and weapons and spells that deal lightning damage. And the last one they touched upon was predictable, and one that I've seen talked about a lot. But it's interesting because it doesn't seem like people like multiclassing into Druid, apparently, because not one of the top 20 combinations involves Druid. But it is one that Larian and a lot of other folks recommend, however, because you can rage as the tanky bear that now tanks half damage, and you don't really suffer the side effects of not being able to cast spells because you can't do that in bear form anyway. And yeah, that's it. I just wanted to take a quick rundown of what the top 10 were. I know there have been tons of guides about like what's good, how you can build it and stuff, but I always like taking a chance to look at like official numbers released by the studio to see what's popular. Hopefully this gives you folks some ideas as to what you can do yourself, because I know I'm not creative enough. That Rogue Monk one does seem really cool. 12 attacks per turn. I might just have to try and spec into that at one point in the future. For now though, I think that's it. Subscribe, like, support me on Patreon if you want, or don't. Either way, I'll be here. I'll see you next time.